The diplomatic chamber hummed with the quiet efficiency of 3 centuries of peace. Ambassador Toth adjusted his radiation scarred hide against the ceremonial chair as he reviewed the latest reports from the Outer Rim territories. The Deathworld Alliance had grown strong through simple principles. Only those who survived the worst could protect the weak, and only the strong deserved to lead. His homeworld of Korathi had forged his people in nuclear fire and acid rain. Every breath on his planet meant filtering toxins that would kill softer species in minutes. The Vrex delegates across the table bore the compressed bone structure of beings raised under crushing gravity, their muscles dense enough to tear through steel plating. The Thalan representatives showed the telltale signs of atmospheric adaptation, their lungs capable of processing the poisonous gases that shrouded their forest world. Together, they had built something beautiful from their shared suffering. The Alliance protected over 400 species across 2 spiral arms, offering security to those who lacked the strength to defend themselves. Garden worlders with their comfortable climates and breathable atmospheres gratefully accepted Alliance protection in exchange for resources and trade goods. It was a system that worked. "The humans have requested a formal meeting," announced General Crix, her Thalan vocal cords adding a metallic rasp to each word. "Their ship will arrive at Outpost 7 within the rotation." Toth nodded absently while scanning the preliminary reports. Earth, they called their world, located in an unremarkable star system near the galactic rim. Initial surveys suggested a remarkably stable planet with liquid water, moderate temperatures, and a breathable atmosphere. Another garden world species seeking protection from the harsh realities of galactic civilization. "Have we confirmed their technological level?" asked Commander Borak, his Vrex frame dwarfing the reinforced chair beneath him. "Basic fusion drives, primitive weapon systems, limited shielding technology," Crix replied. "Standard for a species just achieving interstellar capability. They appear to have established several small colonies in nearby systems, though our scouts report unusual activity in those regions." "Unusual how?" Toth inquired. "The colonies are located on worlds we classified as uninhabitable. High radiation, extreme weather patterns, hostile indigenous life forms. Perhaps the humans made errors in their survey data." Toth dismissed the concern with a wave of one clawed hand. Garden worlders often made such mistakes, driven by desperation or inexperience to attempt colonization of marginal worlds. They usually requested emergency evacuation within a few cycles. The preparations for first contact followed established protocols. The Alliance would present the Standard Protection Treaty, offering military security and guidance in exchange for resource rights and trade concessions. The humans would initially resist, as most species did, before accepting the obvious benefits of Alliance membership. Within a generation, they would be grateful for the shelter provided by their stronger neighbors. Outpost 7 drifted through the void like a metallic flower, its docking arms extended to accommodate vessels from across the galaxy. The human ship approached with surprising confidence, its hull bearing scorch marks and impact craters that suggested recent combat. Toth frowned at the tactical display. Garden worlders rarely encountered violence in their protected star systems. The vessel itself defied easy classification. Too small for a proper warship, too heavily armed for a merchant trader, too scarred for a diplomatic transport. Its design spoke of practical engineering rather than elegant aesthetics. Every surface optimized for function over form. Weapon ports clustered around the nose section like predator teeth, while thick armor plating covered critical systems. "Incoming transmission from the human vessel," reported communications officer next. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human face that immediately challenged every assumption in the Alliance database. The being appeared deceptively fragile, with soft skin unmarked by radiation damage and eyes that suggested an evolutionary history free from atmospheric toxins. Yet something in those eyes made Toth's ancestral instincts whisper warnings about apex predators. "This is Ambassador Williams of the Earth Diplomatic Corps requesting permission to dock," The human said, his voice carrying an accent that suggested multiple languages blended into a single tongue. "We appreciate the Alliance taking time for this meeting." "Permission granted, Ambassador." "We look forward to welcoming Earth into the galactic community." The docking procedure proceeded smoothly, though Toth noted that the human pilot maneuvered their vessel with military precision. The airlock cycled with a hiss of equalizing pressure, and the human delegation stepped aboard Outpost 7. Williams appeared even more fragile in person, standing barely 2 meters tall with a slight build that suggested low-gravity evolution. His companions included a female who introduced herself as Commander Torres and several aides whose relaxed postures somehow managed to convey constant readiness for violence. They moved with the fluid grace of natural predators, despite their apparent physical limitations. "Welcome to Alliance Space," Toth began, employing the formal greeting protocols refined over centuries of first contact situations. "We trust your journey was peaceful." "Mostly," Williams replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We had to deal with some pirates near the border, but nothing our security teams couldn't handle." The casual mention of pirate encounters puzzled Toth. Garden World species typically avoided dangerous regions entirely, relying on Alliance patrols to maintain safe passage through established shipping lanes. The idea that humans might actively engage hostile forces suggested either desperation or remarkable foolishness. The formal presentations began in the station's main conference chamber, with holographic displays showing the full scope of Alliance territory and protection capabilities. Toth outlined the benefits of membership: guaranteed security, access to established trade networks, protection from hostile alien species, and guidance from civilizations that had survived the galaxy's harshest environments. Williams listened attentively, occasionally asking technical questions about Alliance military capabilities and territorial boundaries. His queries revealed a surprising understanding of galactic politics and strategic considerations. Most Garden World species focused on immediate benefits rather than long-term implications. "The protection treaty seems comprehensive," Williams observed after reviewing the standard terms. "However, we'd like to understand more about the threats you're protecting us from." Toth activated another holographic display showing known hostile species and their typical behavior patterns. "The galaxy contains numerous dangers that younger civilizations cannot face alone. Raiders, slavers, territorial expansionist species, and various forms of hostile alien intelligence. The Alliance has dealt with all of these throughout our history." "Interesting," Commander Torres interjected. "What about the Devourers?" The question sent a chill through the Alliance delegation. The Devourers were ancient history, a machine intelligence that had consumed much of the galaxy before mysteriously vanishing eons ago. Few species even remembered their existence, and none discussed them casually. "The Devourers are extinct," General Crick stated firmly. "They have not been active for over 10,000 years. "Are you certain?" Williams asked. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected some unusual energy signatures moving through the outer systems. The patterns match historical descriptions of Devourer technology." Toth exchanged glances with his fellow delegates. If the humans possessed information about Devourer activity, their primitive status might be more complex than initial reports suggested. Garden World species didn't typically maintain deep space monitoring networks or study ancient galactic history. The meeting concluded with Williams requesting time for consultation with Earth leadership before signing any formal agreements. As the human delegation prepared to depart, Toth found himself reconsidering his initial assessment. These beings displayed knowledge and capabilities that seemed inconsistent with their apparent technological limitations. "Ambassador," he called as Williams reached the airlock, "perhaps you could tell us more about Earth's environment. Our surveys suggest a remarkably stable world." Williams paused, his expression shifting to something that might have been amusement. "Earth is beautiful," he said simply, "but stable might not be the word I'd choose. We've learned to adapt to changing conditions." The human ship departed as quietly as it had arrived, leaving the Alliance delegation with more questions than answers. Toth stared at the tactical display showing the vessel's departure vector, wondering what other surprises this new species might reveal. In the depths of space, ancient machines stirred to life, their sensors detecting the energy signatures of organic civilizations once again spreading across the galaxy. The Devourers had been patient, but their hunger remained unchanged. Soon it would be time to feed again. The cultural exchange dinner aboard Outpost 7 buzzed with quiet conversation as delegates from 4 species gathered around a circular table designed to accommodate their diverse physiologies. Ambassador Williams cut into his meal with practiced efficiency while Commander Torres reviewed a datapad displaying what appeared to be colony status reports. General Crix watched the humans with growing fascination. Unlike most Garden World species, they showed no signs of intimidation when surrounded by beings who could crush them without effort. Williams maintained casual conversation while Torres responded to what seemed like routine military communications. Their behavior suggested a species comfortable with danger rather than sheltered from it. "Tell us about Earth's colonial expansion," Toth requested, genuinely curious about their apparent confidence in establishing settlements on hostile worlds. "Our surveys indicate you've chosen some challenging locations for your outposts." Williams paused in his meal, exchanging a quick glance with Torres before responding. "Earth taught us that challenging environments often provide the best opportunities for growth. Our people tend to thrive when faced with adversity." "But surely your homeworld provided adequate resources for population growth," Commander Borak interjected. "Why risk colonizing dangerous worlds when safer alternatives exist?" Torres looked up from her datapad with what might have been amusement. "Earth has over 8 billion people living in environments that most species would consider uninhabitable. We've got permanent settlements in regions where temperatures drop to -50 degrees, cities built on active geological fault lines, and communities that survive regular bombardment by cosmic radiation at high altitudes." The Alliance delegates absorbed this information with growing confusion. Garden worlds typically supported stable populations in comfortable climates with minimal environmental challenges. The idea of voluntarily inhabiting hostile regions suggested either desperation or an unusual adaptation strategy. "You mentioned temperatures of -50 degrees, Crick said carefully. "Surely these are emergency shelters rather than permanent settlements." "Oh no," Williams replied cheerfully. "Some of our most successful cities exist in what we call polar regions. The indigenous population there has adapted to extreme cold over thousands of generations. They hunt massive predators across frozen landscapes and build thriving communities despite regular blizzards that would shut down most civilizations." Toth felt his radiation-hardened scales prickle with unease. The casual mention of hunting massive predators suggested a level of environmental hostility that rivaled Deathworld conditions. Yet the humans spoke of these circumstances as routine aspects of their civilization. "What kind of predators?" Borak asked, his compressed vocal cords adding gravity to the question. Torres consulted her datapad briefly. "In the polar regions, mainly bears that can weigh up to 800 kilograms, though the real dangers are pack hunters like wolves. In other regions, we deal with various big cats, venomous snakes, sharks, crocodiles, and several species of aggressive primates." The list sent a collective shiver through the Alliance delegation. A single 800-kilogram predator would require heavy weapons to neutralize. Yet the humans discussed multiple such threats as commonplace hazards. Garden worlds typically contained herbivorous species and small scavengers at most. "How do your colonists defend themselves against such creatures?" Crix inquired. "Mostly they don't need to," Williams answered. "Humans learn to coexist with dangerous wildlife from childhood. We teach our young to recognize threats, avoid unnecessary risks, and respond appropriately when confronted by hostile animals. Most predators prefer easier prey than humans who fight back." The phrase "humans who fight back" echoed in Toth's mind as he processed the implications. Garden world species typically avoided confrontation entirely, relying on technology and environmental control to eliminate dangers. The concept of routine predator encounters suggested an evolutionary history steeped in constant violence. Perhaps we could discuss Earth's climate patterns, he suggested, hoping to find evidence of the stable conditions that typically characterized garden worlds. Torres brightened at the change of subject. Earth's weather systems are pretty dynamic. We get regular hurricane seasons that can generate winds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour, tornado systems that can level entire cities, and monsoon patterns that dump several meters of rainfall in a matter of days. Surely your population evacuates during such events, Borak stated. Sometimes, Williams admitted, but mostly we just prepare and ride them out. Hurricane-resistant architecture, early warning systems, emergency supplies, that sort of thing. The really dangerous storms only hit specific regions during predictable seasons, so people learn to adapt their lifestyles accordingly. Toth struggled to comprehend the casual acceptance of weather systems that would devastate most Alliance colonies. 300-kilometer-per-hour winds would strip the atmosphere from weaker worlds, while several meters of rainfall in a few days would trigger catastrophic flooding on any civilized planet. How many casualties do these weather events typically cause? Crix asked. Depends on the severity and preparation level, Torres replied after consulting her datapad. A major hurricane might kill a few dozen people if it hits a populated area, though really bad ones can reach into the thousands. Tornadoes are usually more localized, maybe a handful of casualties unless they hit a city directly. The numbers stunned the Alliance delegates into silence. Most garden world species measured annual casualty rates in single digits from accidents and natural causes. The idea that weather alone could kill thousands of people regularly suggested a level of environmental hostility that approached Deathworld. Conditions. Tell us about your military forces, Toth requested, beginning to suspect that Earth's apparent stability masked a more complex reality. Williams and Torres exchanged another meaningful glance before Williams responded. Earth has experienced some internal conflicts over the centuries, but we've largely moved beyond that phase of our development. Our current military forces focus primarily on peacekeeping and disaster response operations. What kind of disasters require military intervention? Borak inquired. Earthquake response, volcanic evacuations, tsunami relief operations, forest fire containment, that sort of thing, Torres answered. Plus, we maintain rapid response teams for dealing with more unusual threats. The casual mention of earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis, and forest fires as routine concerns confirmed Toth's growing suspicion that Earth was far from the stable garden world described in initial surveys. Each of these phenomena represented catastrophic events that could destroy entire civilizations. Yet the humans discussed them as manageable challenges requiring only military coordination. How frequently do these disasters occur? He asked. Well, we get several thousand earthquakes every day, though most are too small to notice, Williams replied thoughtfully. Volcanic activity varies by region, but we monitor about 1,500 active volcanoes at any given time. Tsunamis are less common, but we maintain early warning systems across all coastal areas. Forest fires are seasonal, depending on rainfall patterns and temperature fluctuations. Crix leaned forward, her metallic voice carrying a note of disbelief. Did you say several thousand earthquakes per day? That's just the ones our instruments detect, Torres confirmed. Most people only notice the larger ones, maybe magnitude 5 or above on our measurement scale. Those might happen a few times per year in any given region. The revelation that Earth experienced thousands of seismic events daily shattered any remaining illusion about the planet's stability. The Alliance classified worlds with annual earthquake activity as geologically unstable and unsuitable for major settlements. A planet experiencing thousands of daily tremors would be considered actively dangerous to most species. Perhaps we should discuss your species' physiological adaptations, Toth suggested, hoping to understand how such apparently fragile beings survived in such hostile conditions. Williams smiled, the expression somehow managing to convey both friendliness and something that made Toth's predator instincts whisper warnings. Humans are pretty adaptable. We can survive in a wide range of environmental conditions, modify our behavior to deal with local threats, and learn from experience to avoid repeating dangerous mistakes. Could you be more specific about your physical capabilities? Crix pressed. Torres consulted her datapad again. Standard human physiology includes the ability to function in temperatures ranging from -40 to +50 degrees Celsius, operate effectively at altitudes up to about 4,000 meters, survive without water for 3 to 5 days, and go without food for several weeks if necessary. The specifications exceeded the survival parameters of most Alliance species. Few beings could tolerate such extreme temperature variations or maintain consciousness at high altitudes where atmospheric pressure dropped to dangerous levels. The ability to survive extended periods without resources suggested evolutionary adaptation to harsh conditions. What about your pain tolerance and injury recovery rates? Barak asked. Humans can function through considerable discomfort when necessary, Williams answered carefully. We've developed medical techniques to manage trauma and accelerate healing. Though serious injuries obviously require proper treatment, a conversation continued late into the station's night cycle, with each exchange revealing new aspects of human physiology and environmental adaptation that challenged everything the Alliance understood about garden world species. By the time the humans retired to their quarters, Toth found himself reconsidering every assumption about Earth's true nature. Alone in his chambers, he activated a secure communication link to Alliance Command. The initial report would require careful wording to convey his growing concerns about humanity's actual capabilities without triggering unnecessary alarm protocols. Something told him that first impressions might be dangerously misleading where these particular garden worlders were concerned. 3 months after first contact, emergency klaxons echoed through Alliance Command as reports flooded in from patrol ships throughout the outer territories. Pirate fleets had launched coordinated attacks on shipping lanes near human space, striking with unprecedented boldness and unknown vessel configurations. The raids targeted both Alliance and independent merchants, suggesting a new hostile force had entered the region. Fleet Admiral Zara studied tactical displays showing attack patterns across 17 star systems. The raiders operated with military precision, hitting valuable cargo shipments while avoiding heavily defended convoys. Their ships appeared on sensors briefly before vanishing into hyperspace, leaving behind wreckage and scattered escape pods as the only evidence of their presence. Deploy the 4th Battle Group to the Kepler sector, she ordered, her scarred Korathi features grim beneath the command center's harsh lighting. These pirates are either very lucky or receiving intelligence from inside sources. Commander Rex guided his patrol vessel through the debris field where merchant trader Prosperity had met its end 6 hours earlier. The freighter's twisted hull drifted among scattered cargo containers while automated distress beacons continued their futile broadcasts. His crew worked quietly at their stations, recording evidence and searching for survivors. Energy signatures suggest the attackers used plasma cannons and graviton torpedoes, reported Lieutenant Nara, her Thalon respiratory system filtering the bridge atmosphere with mechanical precision. Military-grade weapons, not the improvised systems typical of pirate organizations. How many vessels in the attack group? Rex asked. Sensor ghosts indicate at least 12 ships, possibly more. They maintained formation discipline throughout the engagement and executed a coordinated withdrawal when merchant security forces arrived. The tactical analysis painted a disturbing picture. Traditional pirates operated in small groups using captured civilian vessels modified with basic weapons. These raiders demonstrated organizational capabilities and equipment resources that suggested state sponsorship or access to significant funding sources. Set course for the human colony in the Ross system, Rex ordered. If these pirates are operating near human space, the colonists might need emergency evacuation. The journey through hyperspace took 18 hours, during which Rex reviewed intelligence reports about human colonial activities. Their settlements occupied worlds that Alliance surveys had classified as marginally habitable at best, with high radiation levels, unstable geology, and hostile native species. Most civilizations would consider such locations unsuitable for permanent habitation, dropping back into normal space. Rex expected to find human colonies under siege or already destroyed by pirate raids. Instead, his sensors detected a single human patrol vessel drifting silently among the asteroids that comprised the system's mining belt. The ship appeared undamaged but showed no response to standard hailing frequencies. "This is Captain Foster, of the Earth Defense Force vessel Defiant," came the eventual reply, the human's voice carrying casual professionalism that seemed incongruous with the tactical situation. "Sorry for the delay, we were running silent while cleaning up some debris." Rex activated his main view screen to reveal Foster's image. The human appeared relaxed, despite operating alone in hostile territory, his uniform bearing no obvious signs of recent combat stress. Behind him, bridge crew members moved with the efficient coordination of veterans rather than the nervous energy typical of forces facing superior numbers. "Captain Foster, we received reports of pirate activity in this region. Are your colonies secure?" "Oh, the pirates," Foster replied with what might have been amusement. "Yeah, we dealt with them earlier today. Took a while to round up all the pieces afterward, but I think we got everything cataloged for the insurance investigators." The casual dismissal of a pirate threat sent alarm signals through Rex's nervous system. Human patrol vessels were smaller and more lightly armed than Alliance frigates. Yet Foster spoke as though engaging multiple raiders was routine maintenance rather than desperate combat. "How many ships were you facing?" Lieutenant Nara asked. 15. "Confirmed, possibly 17 if you count the 2 that tried to run when things went sideways," Foster answered. "They hit one of our mining platforms first. Figured they could grab some refined metals and disappear before anyone responded." 15 ships, Sergeant Borak repeated slowly, his Vrex vocal cords adding gravelly emphasis to each word. "Against a single patrol vessel." "Well, not exactly single," Foster corrected. "The mining platform had defensive systems, and we coordinated with civilian traffic in the area. Plus, the asteroid field provided some tactical advantages once we figured out how to use it properly." Rex stared at his tactical display in confusion. The debris field his sensors had initially dismissed as space junk suddenly took on new significance. Scattered metal fragments showed blast patterns consistent with ship hulls subjected to extreme kinetic forces, while energy signatures indicated recent weapons fire and reactor breaches. "Could you clarify your engagement tactics?" he requested, Foster's expression shifted to something that might have been embarrassment. "It's kind of hard to explain without sounding reckless. The pirates expected us to maintain standard engagement distances and fight according to normal tactical doctrines. Instead, we used the asteroids as cover and closed to ramming distance before they realized what was happening." "Ramming distance," Rex said carefully. "Yeah, we put our bow straight through their command ship's bridge section. After that, the rest of their formation lost coordination and started making mistakes. 2 of them actually collided trying to avoid our follow-up attacks, and 3 more suffered reactor failures when they tried to execute emergency hyperspace jumps without proper clearance calculations." The description of deliberately ramming an enemy vessel sent shock waves through Rex's crew. Collision attacks were considered desperate last resort tactics employed only when all other options had been exhausted. The idea of using ramming as an opening maneuver suggested either suicidal recklessness or a fundamental misunderstanding of acceptable risk levels. "Wasn't your ship damaged in the collision?" Nara asked. "Some hull scoring and a few blown relay circuits, nothing our repair. Teams couldn't handle," Foster replied. "We reinforced the forward sections after our last engagement with raiders near the Vega colonies. Turns out ramming works pretty well if you hit them in the right spots." The casual mention of previous ramming attacks indicated that humans employed collision tactics regularly rather than as emergency measures. Rex struggled to process the implications of a species that considered deliberately crashing spaceships into enemies a viable strategic option. "What happened to the surviving pirates?" he inquired. "We're transporting 12 prisoners back to base for interrogation," Foster answered. Our intelligence people want to find out who's been supplying them with military-grade equipment and targeting information. The rest didn't make it through the engagement. You have survivors from a ramming attack? Oh, we didn't ram them hard enough to kill everyone, Foster explained with the patience of someone addressing a slow student. Just enough to disable their command systems and convince them to surrender. We're not monsters or anything. The distinction between killing enemies and simply disabling them through controlled collisions seemed to escape Rex entirely. The precision required to calculate ramming attacks that would neutralize threats without causing complete destruction exceeded the tactical capabilities of most Alliance commanders. Captain Foster, would you be willing to share your sensor logs from the engagement? Alliance Command would benefit from understanding these new pirate tactics. Sure thing, transmitting now, Foster replied. Though I should warn you, our approach might seem a little unconventional by Alliance standards. Earth Defense Force doctrines emphasize adaptability and creative problem-solving over rigid tactical procedures. The data package arrived moments later, containing detailed recordings of the entire engagement from multiple sensor perspectives. Rex authorized immediate transmission to Alliance Command while reviewing the tactical summary. The humans had faced overwhelming odds and achieved complete victory through methods that defied every principle of conventional space warfare. As the Defiant prepared to return to its patrol route, Foster's image lingered on the view screen. Captain Rex, if you encounter more pirate activity in this region, feel free to contact us. Earth forces maintain rapid response capabilities throughout human space, and we're always happy to assist Alliance vessels. The offer of assistance from a species the Alliance had intended to protect struck Rex as profoundly ironic. Watching the human patrol ship disappear into hyperspace, he wondered what other surprises humanity might reveal about their true capabilities. His contemplation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Alliance Command. Long-range sensors had detected massive energy signatures moving through deep space toward the galactic core. The readings matched ancient records from the last time the Devourers had stirred from their slumber. The galaxy was about to discover whether humanity's unconventional tactics would prove effective against threats far more dangerous than pirates. The emergency session of the Alliance High Council convened in the deepest secure chambers beneath command. Headquarters as holographic displays showed the approaching nightmare. Ancient sensor networks throughout the galaxy flickered to life, detecting energy signatures that had remained dormant for over 10,000 years. The Devourers were returning. Fleet Admiral Zara addressed the assembled representatives with the gravity befitting a species-threatening crisis. Long-range reconnaissance confirms 17 Devourer scout fleets moving through the Outer Rim territories. Each formation contains approximately 50 vessels with technology levels far exceeding our current capabilities. The tactical projections painted a grim picture. Machine intelligences that had consumed entire civilizations were methodically advancing through populated space, leaving behind empty star systems stripped of all organic life. Their ships regenerated damage faster than conventional weapons could inflict it, while their adaptive programming countered every known tactical doctrine within hours of first contact. Evacuation protocols are already in effect for all civilian populations in threatened sectors, General Crix reported, her metallic voice echoing through the chamber. However, our transport capacity cannot accommodate the billions of beings at risk if the advance continues at current pace. Ambassador Williams sat quietly in the observer section, studying the tactical data with an expression that might have been professional interest rather than the terror displayed by most Garden World representatives. His presence at an alliance military briefing had generated considerable debate, but his species' proximity to Devourer advance routes made their input valuable. Ambassador Williams, Zara addressed him directly. Human colonies lie directly in the path of the advancing machine fleets. We recommend immediate evacuation of all settlements to Alliance-protected space. Williams activated his communication device and spoke briefly with someone off-screen before responding. Thank you for the warning, Admiral. Earth Command appreciates The intelligence update and your concern for our colonists? Will you be implementing evacuation procedures? Crix asked. Actually, we'll be taking a more proactive approach, Williams replied calmly. Our deep space monitoring networks detected the Devourer energy signatures several weeks ago, and we've already begun repositioning assets to optimal engagement positions. The statement sent a ripple of shocked silence through the council chamber. The concept of deliberately engaging Devourer forces contradicted every survival instinct possessed by organic species. Even the Alliance military, forged in the harshest environments imaginable, planned only fighting retreats and delaying actions against the ancient machine intelligence. Ambassador, I think you misunderstand the nature of the threat, Admiral. Zara said carefully. The Devourers are not pirates or raiders that can be discouraged through tactical victories. They are a machine intelligence dedicated to consuming all organic life in the galaxy. No known weapon can permanently damage their vessels, and their numbers are effectively unlimited. We understand the tactical situation, Williams answered. Earth forces have been analyzing Devourer technology and behavior patterns since we first detected their return. Our strategic assessment suggests they can be defeated through appropriate application of force. Commander Barak leaned forward, his massive frame creaking against the reinforced chair. What kind of analysis could possibly suggest victory against an enemy that destroyed the first galactic civilization? Williams consulted his communication device again before responding. Historical records indicate the Devourers withdrew from galactic space roughly 10,000 years ago, not because they had consumed everything available, but because they encountered unexpected resistance from an unknown source. Our xenorchaeology teams have been studying the patterns of their previous retreat, and we believe we've identified exploitable weaknesses in their operational doctrine. The suggestion that humanity possessed superior knowledge about ancient galactic history challenged fundamental assumptions about their technological development. Garden world species rarely maintained extensive historical records, focusing instead on immediate survival and resource acquisition needs. What weaknesses? Zara demanded. Devourer tactical programming assumes rational behavior from organic opponents, Williams explained. They adapt to counter-logical strategic responses, but they have difficulty processing tactics that appear suicidal or contradictory to standard military doctrine. Their machine intelligence excels at optimization but struggles with true randomness and illogical decision-making. The explanation sent another wave of unease through the Alliance delegation. The implication that effective anti-Devourer tactics required abandoning rational military thinking suggested approaches that no sane commander would consider implementing. You're suggesting deliberately irrational tactics against a superior enemy? Crix asked. Not irrational, Williams corrected. Unpredictable. Human military doctrine emphasizes adaptability, creative problem-solving, and willingness to accept casualties in pursuit of strategic objectives. These principles tend to produce tactical solutions that machine intelligences find difficult to counter. Before anyone could respond, emergency alerts began flashing throughout the chamber. The first Devourer scout fleet had made contact with human patrol forces in the Centauri sector. Initial reports suggested a massive engagement involving hundreds of vessels on both sides. Put the tactical feed on main display, Zara ordered. The holographic projections shifted to show real-time sensor data from the battle zone. Devourer vessels moved in perfect geometric formations, their weapons systematically targeting human ships with mechanical precision. The human fleet appeared smaller and more dispersed, individual vessels maneuvering independently rather than maintaining coordinated battle lines. Human forces are being overwhelmed, Warrock observed. They're taking severe casualties. Williams activated his communication device and spoke rapidly with someone identified as Fleet Admiral Torres. The conversation involved tactical terminology that the Alliance translation system struggled to process, including references to something called ramming speed and boarding actions. Actually, casualties are within acceptable parameters, Williams reported. Admiral Torres indicates the engagement is proceeding according to operational plan. On the main display, human ships began executing maneuvers that defied every principle of space combat doctrine. Individual vessels accelerated directly toward devourer formations, ignoring incoming fire while closing to point-blank range. Several human ships suffered catastrophic damage but continued their approach vectors even as sections of their hulls vaporized under enemy weapons. "They're conducting suicide attacks," Crix whispered. "Ramming attacks," Williams corrected. "Our ships are specifically designed to survive high-velocity collisions with enemy vessels. The Devourer hull configurations aren't optimized for impact resistance." The first collision sent shock waves through the machine formation as a human destroyer drove its reinforced bow through a Devourer cruiser's midsection. The machine vessel split apart in a cascade of sparks and debris while the human ship emerged from the wreckage with significant but repairable damage. More human vessels closed to ramming distance, their crews apparently undeterred by the horrific damage inflicted on their ships. Devourer formations began losing cohesion as individual machine vessels tried to avoid collision courses while maintaining optimal firing solutions. Their perfect geometric patterns dissolved into chaotic evasive maneuvers. "Impossible," Admiral Zara breathed. "No organic species would willingly collide with enemy vessels." "Humans would," Williams said simply. "Our species has a long history of using desperate measures to achieve strategic objectives. Sometimes the only way to win is to be willing to sacrifice everything for victory." The battle continued for 6 hours, with human forces employing increasingly unconventional tactics. Ships with disabled weapons systems rammed enemy vessels. Crews evacuated onto Devourer hulls to conduct boarding actions in the vacuum of space. Entire squadrons coordinated kamikaze attacks against machine command nodes. When the engagement finally ended, the Devourer scout fleet had been completely destroyed. Human casualties were severe, but survivors were already coordinating salvage operations and preparing for the next engagement. Medical ships moved through the debris field, recovering personnel from damaged vessels and providing emergency treatment. "How is this possible?" Crix asked. Williams smiled, the expression somehow managing to convey both satisfaction and something that made the alliance delegates deeply uncomfortable. "Because we're not fighting to survive. We're fighting to win, regardless of the cost." The Devourers can adapt to rational tactics, but they can't adapt to an enemy that's willing to die to achieve victory. The implications of humanity's tactical approach sent shock waves through Alliance Command. A species that treated certain death as an acceptable strategic option possessed capabilities that transcended normal military calculations. If humans could defeat Devourer forces through sheer determination and willingness to sacrifice themselves, they might represent the galaxy's best hope for survival. Or they might be the most dangerous species the Alliance had ever encountered. Deep in space, the remaining Devourer fleets detected the destruction of their scout forces and began recalculating their operational parameters. For the first time in their existence, the ancient machines encountered an enemy that defied logical analysis. Their collective intelligence struggled to process the concept of organic beings who viewed certain death as tactically acceptable. The machine networks exchanged data streams containing combat recordings from the Centauri engagement. Human behavior patterns showed no correlation with standard survival instincts or rational decision-making processes. Individual vessels had deliberately destroyed themselves to inflict damage on Devourer forces, while crew members had abandoned ship safety to conduct boarding actions in lethal environments. Primary Devourer command nodes initiated emergency strategy recalculations, searching their vast databases for precedents that might explain such seemingly irrational behavior. The analysis produced disturbing conclusions. Throughout their 10,000-year history of galactic conquest, the machines had never encountered organic species willing to guarantee their own destruction to achieve tactical objectives. Meanwhile, human fleets throughout the Outer Rim began coordinating for a massive counteroffensive. Admiral Torres broadcast tactical updates to over 200 vessels positioned across 17 star systems, her commands mixing standard military terminology with phrases that would have horrified any rational commander. All units, this is Fleet Command. Execute Operation Broken Arrow, ramming speed authorized for all vessels. Boarding teams prepare for vacuum assault protocols. Remember, people, the only way home is through them. The human offensive began, simultaneously across multiple sectors as their fleets advanced directly into devour formations without regard for odds or survival probabilities. Ship after ship accelerated toward the enemy, their crews singing battle songs that celebrated death in combat rather than lamenting its inevitability. Devourer tactical systems attempted to adapt by increasing evasive maneuvers and targeting engines rather than weapon systems. The strategy proved counterproductive as disabled human vessels simply continued their collision courses using attitude thrusters and emergency systems. Some ships even jettisoned sections of their hulls to reduce mass and increase acceleration toward enemy targets. The machine intelligence began experiencing something analogous to panic as their formations disintegrated under assault by opponents who seemed immune to the fear of death. Devourer vessels that had operated with perfect coordination for millennia started making errors, their programming unable to process an enemy that treated mutual destruction as victory. Human boarding teams proved even more disturbing to machine sensibilities. Organic beings in primitive environmental suits breached Devourer hulls using explosive charges and cutting tools, then proceeded to destroy critical systems while exposed to radiation levels that should have killed them instantly. The humans fought until their suits failed, their oxygen ran out, or enemy defenses finally overwhelmed them, but they never retreated. Within 72 hours, human forces had destroyed 6 complete Devourer fleets and severely damaged 4 others. The ancient machines began withdrawing from human space, their collective intelligence recognizing that continued engagement would result in unacceptable losses against an enemy that couldn't be defeated through conventional means. Admiral Zara watched the tactical displays with a mixture of awe and horror as human casualties mounted into the hundreds of thousands. Entire crews had sacrificed themselves to cripple single Devourer vessels, while others had continued fighting until their ships broke apart around them. The level of acceptable losses exceeded anything in Alliance military doctrine. How do they maintain morale with such casualty rates? She asked Williams during a brief lull in the communications traffic. Because everyone understands what we're fighting for, Williams replied, his expression grave. Humans learned long ago that some things are worth dying for. Freedom, justice, the protection of innocent lives. When you truly believe in something greater than yourself, death becomes acceptable if it serves that cause. The philosophical implications troubled Zara deeply. Alliance species fought to survive, to protect their territories and preserve their civilizations. Humans seemed to fight for abstract concepts that transcended mere survival, giving them a tactical advantage that bordered on the supernatural. Your people are willing to die for strangers, she observed. Our people are willing to die so that strangers might live free, Williams corrected. That's what makes us human. The final phase of the offensive saw human forces pursuing retreating Devourer fleets deep into previously conquered space. Systems that have been stripped of organic life for thousands of years suddenly blazed with weapons fire as human ships engaged the ancient enemy in desperate battles among dead worlds. Commander Torres broadcast her final transmission from the bridge of the heavy cruiser, indomitable as it rammed a Devourer command ship in the ruins of the Aldebaran system. Her words echoed across the communication networks, reaching every human vessel engaged in the offensive. This is for every world they've killed, every species they've destroyed, every future they've stolen. We are the line that shall not be crossed. We are the shield that guards the innocent. Today we teach the universe that evil has limits, and we are those limits. The Indomitable's reactor detonated moments later, tearing a hole in space itself and crippling the Devourer command network throughout the sector. The explosion triggered a cascade failure that disabled machine forces across multiple star systems, finally breaking their coordination entirely. Within a week, the surviving Devourer fleets had withdrawn to the galactic core, abandoning their offensive entirely. For the first time in their existence, The ancient machines had been forced to retreat by organic opponents. Human forces maintained, pursued until their fuel and ammunition were exhausted. Then began the long process of recovering survivors and assessing the cost of victory. The casualty reports made grim reading. Over 40% of human naval personnel had been killed or severely wounded during the offensive. Dozens of ships had been lost entirely, their crews dying in the cold vacuum of space while their vessels burned around them. Yet somehow, humanity had achieved the impossible. They had defeated the Devourers through sheer force of will and absolute refusal to accept defeat. The galaxy was safe, at least for now, protected by a species that viewed certain death as an acceptable price for victory. 6 months after the Devourer War ended, Ambassador Williams walked through the rebuilt corridors of Outpost 7 toward what would become the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. The station bore new scars from emergency evacuations and hasty military conversions, but its main conference chamber had been restored to accommodate representatives from dozens of species seeking to understand the new reality. The Galactic Council had requested this gathering to formalize relationships with humanity and establish protocols for future cooperation. What they received instead was a fundamental restructuring of galactic civilization around principles that most species were still struggling to comprehend. Admiral Zara presided over the assembly, her radiation-scarred features bearing new lines of stress from commanding fleets in impossible battles. Around the circular table sat delegates from every major power, their attention focused on the modest human delegation that had somehow changed everything. The contrast between their apparent fragility and demonstrated capabilities continued to unsettle even veteran diplomats. The proposed Mutual Defense Coalition represents a significant departure from traditional alliance protection treaties. Zara began, her voice carrying the weight of recent revelations. Rather than offering security to weaker species, we would be establishing partnerships between equals committed to defending galactic civilization against external threats. The shift in language reflected a deeper transformation in how the alliance viewed itself and its role. No longer could they consider themselves the galaxy's natural protectors, when humanity had demonstrated capabilities that exceeded their own. The humans had fought and defeated enemies that Alliance forces couldn't even engage effectively. General Crix activated holographic displays showing the proposed coalition structure. Human forces would maintain their current territorial responsibilities, while coordinating with Alliance fleets on strategic threats. Joint training exercises would familiarize all personnel with integrated tactical doctrines. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably at the mention of integrated tactics. Reports from the Devourer War had described human combat methods that challenged every assumption about acceptable military behavior. The idea of learning such techniques disturbed species that valued survival over victory. What exactly would these joint training exercises involve? Asked Representative Vorth of the Centaurian Republic, his tentacles curling with anxiety. Commander Torres, newly promoted to admiral rank, consulted her datapad before responding. Basic integration would focus on communication protocols and coordination procedures. Advanced training would cover boarding actions, ramming techniques, and acceptable casualty parameters for various threat scenarios. The casual mention of ramming techniques as routine training subjects sent ripples of unease through the assembled delegates. Most species considered collision attacks desperate last resort measures, not standard tactical options to be practiced regularly. Perhaps Admiral Torres could clarify what constitutes acceptable casualty parameters in human military doctrine, suggested Ambassador Crix. Torres exchanged glances with Williams before responding carefully. Human forces operate under the principle that mission accomplishment takes priority over force preservation. Acceptable losses depend on strategic objectives, but we're prepared to sacrifice entire fleets if necessary to protect civilian populations or prevent larger catastrophes. The mathematical precision with which humans discussed their own deaths continued to disturb Alliance representatives. Their species had evolved to prioritize survival above all other considerations. making human tactical philosophy fundamentally alien despite their shared organic origins. How do you maintain unit cohesion when personnel face such high mortality rates? Asked Commander Borak. Through shared commitment to principles larger than individual survival, Williams answered. Human soldiers fight for concepts like justice, freedom, and the protection of innocent life. When you truly believe in something worth dying for, death becomes acceptable if it serves that cause. The philosophical framework underlying human military effectiveness challenged basic assumptions about motivation and morale. Alliance forces fought to defend their territories and preserve their civilizations, but humans seemed to fight for abstract ideals that transcended mere survival considerations. What guarantees do member species have that human forces won't view them as acceptable casualties in pursuit of these larger principles? Representative Vorth inquired nervously. Williams leaned forward, his expression becoming serious. The same guarantee we give our own people. We will never ask others to make sacrifices we wouldn't make ourselves. And we will never abandon allies who trust us with their safety. Human military doctrine includes absolute prohibition against leaving wounded or dead behind, regardless of tactical situation. Even at the cost of mission failure? Crix asked. Especially then, Torres interjected. Abandoning people who depend on you is mission failure, regardless of whatever other objectives you might accomplish. Our forces have standing orders to continue rescue operations until everyone comes home or nobody's left to attempt recovery. The concept of prioritizing personnel recovery over strategic objectives inverted normal military thinking. Most commanders would sacrifice individual units to preserve larger formations or achieve critical mission parameters. Humans, apparently, considered such calculations unacceptable violations of their moral code. Admiral Zara activated new tactical displays showing the proposed coalition fleet structure. Joint operations would pair alliance vessels with human units, allowing both forces to complement each other's capabilities. Alliance ships provide superior defensive systems and long-range firepower, while human vessels excel at close-quarters combat and unconventional tactics. What about command authority during joint operations? Asked Representative Chen of the Tau Ceti Collective. Tactical command rotates based on engagement type and local expertise, Williams explained. Alliance forces lead during defensive operations and standard fleet actions. Human commanders take precedence during boarding actions, ramming attacks, or situations requiring high-risk tactical solutions. The division of authority acknowledged that different species possess different tactical strengths, but it also recognized that humans excelled in precisely those areas that other species avoided. The arrangement would expose Alliance personnel to combat methods that contradicted their evolutionary instincts. How do we address the psychological impact on non-human personnel exposed to human tactical doctrines? Borak inquired. Torres consulted her datapad again. We've developed modified training programs that respect species-specific psychological limitations while building familiarity with joint operations. Nobody's forced to participate in tactics that violate their fundamental nature, but everyone needs to understand how we operate. What about species that find human combat methods morally objectionable? Vorth pressed. Then they probably shouldn't join the coalition, Williams answered bluntly. We're not asking anyone to change their values, but we can't change ours either. Human forces will continue operating according to our established principles regardless of external approval. The statement carried an implicit threat that troubled several delegates. Humanity had demonstrated the capability to defeat galactic-level threats independently, giving them leverage that transcended normal diplomatic considerations. They were offering partnership, not requesting permission. Admiral Zara recognized the tension building in the chamber and moved to address broader concerns. The coalition structure preserves member autonomy while establishing mutual defense obligations. No species would be required to adopt human tactical doctrines, but all members commit to supporting each other against external threats. What constitutes an external threat requiring coalition response? Asked Ambassador Crix. Hostile forces that threaten galactic civilization as a whole, Torres replied. Machine intelligences, interstellar parasites, dimensional invaders, that sort of thing. Internal conflicts between member species would be handled through diplomatic channels rather than military intervention. The distinction between internal and external threats implied that humans had encountered a broader range of galactic dangers than previously suspected. Their casual mention of dimensional invaders suggested experience with phenomena that most species considered theoretical. Possibilities at best. How extensive is human knowledge of potential galactic threats? Representative Chun inquired. Williams activated his communication device and spoke briefly with someone off-screen before responding. Earth maintains monitoring networks throughout known space and several adjacent dimensions. We've cataloged approximately 47 distinct threat categories that could endanger galactic civilization, including 3 that we're currently tracking at minimal alert levels. The revelation that humanity possessed such comprehensive threat assessment capabilities stunned the assembled delegates. Alliance intelligence services had identified fewer than a dozen potential galactic dangers, and most of those were considered remote possibilities rather than active concerns. Would Earth be willing to share this threat intelligence with coalition members? Zara asked. Absolutely, Williams confirmed. Information sharing is fundamental to effective mutual defense. We'll establish joint intelligence centers and coordinate early warning systems throughout coalition space. The meeting continued for several hours as delegates worked through the technical details of coalition structure, command authority, and operational protocols. Despite initial resistance, most species recognized that the changing galactic environment required new approaches to collective security. The final treaty established the Galactic Defense Coalition as a voluntary association of species committed to protecting galactic civilization against external threats. Human forces would provide rapid response capabilities and specialized tactical expertise, while Alliance members contributed defensive infrastructure and conventional military support. As the delegates departed, Williams remained behind to address private concerns with Admiral Zara. The veteran commander's expression suggested she still struggled with fundamental questions about humanity's true nature and motivations. Admiral Torres mentioned that humans have experience with dimensional invaders, she said carefully. How long has your species been fighting threats at this level? Williams considered the question seriously before answering. Earth has been preparing for the worst-case scenario for over 2 centuries. We learned early that the universe is a dangerous place and that someone has to stand guard against the darkness. We decided that someone might as well be us. Why? Zara asked. Why accept such responsibility when you could simply protect yourselves and ignore external threats? Williams smiled, the expression somehow managing to convey both warmth and something that made Zara's predator instincts whisper warnings. Because that's what humans do. We see people in danger and we help. We see evil spreading and we fight it. We see impossible odds and we charge anyway. Not because we have to, but because we choose to. The philosophical framework underlying human behavior continued to elude Zara's understanding, but she recognized its power. A species that fought for abstract principles rather than concrete survival needs possessed capabilities that transcended normal military calculations. Walking through the station's observation deck, she watched human and Alliance ships conducting joint exercises in the space around. Outpost 7. The vessels moved in coordinated formations, their crews learning to work together despite fundamental differences in tactical philosophy and risk tolerance. The galaxy was entering a new era, protected by an alliance between species that had survived the worst their worlds could offer, and one species that had looked at the worst the universe could offer and decided it wasn't good enough. Together, they might actually succeed in keeping the darkness at bay. In the depths of space, ancient evils stirred and calculated, but for the first time in galactic history, they faced opponents who were unimpressed by impossible odds and unintimidated by certain death. The universe had finally met its match in beings who treated survival as optional and victory as mandatory. Humanity had found its place among the stars not as conquerors or refugees, but as guardians willing to stand watch against the night. The Deathworld Alliance had wanted peace, and by partnering with the most peacefully dangerous species in the galaxy, they had finally achieved it.